time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness, sponsored by Hierophant Publishing, Hampton Roads Publishing, and Insight Events USA. This is Freeman Michaels here with Sandy Stewart.
Hi, Freeman.
How are you?
I'm a little jet-lagged, but
Yes.
really excited to be here.
Yeah, you're back from Toronto. Barnett's working away at Milton Secret.
Yeah,
and,
very exciting. And then Italy.
Oh, no, you were in Italy. That's right.
Toronto. Well, I actually was in Texas, Toronto, and Italy.
Unbelievable.
So I'm back home now.
Wow.
My brain doesn't know what time it is, but my body is here.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a trip.
Yeah, lots of exciting things all around, forcing me to expand my speed limits of how much love and excitement and new unknown I can handle. And
I love that.
Feel myself up against it. I must say, I feel myself up against it. And sometimes I crash up against it, and sometimes I ease into it.
Yeah, and being okay with the challenge. You know, this is such a theme, and I don't know, I keep coming back to it, is that how do I want to relate to the challenge?
Yeah.
And can I presume that there's something constructive in this? And can I move into relationship with my resistance that's coming up so that it shifts from, the terrifying chaos to the beautiful chaos?
Yeah.
And becomes something I can build with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some days yes, and some days no. And
That's
some
right.
moments yes, and
That's
some
right.
moments no.
That's right. We're about to do ATL in Hawaii, and it's the spirit of adventure. And so I'm on the programming committee. For those of you who don't know, ATL is the Association of Transformational Leaders. And we're talking all about adventure and stepping into that, sort of risk. What are you risking? And that is both literal in terms of, for me, the water sports stuff is a little hairy. I'm not totally comfortable in the water. So, we're going to be taking paddleboard lessons and all these outdoor, water activities. So my relationship with adventure, the fear and moving through it, but also the internal risk of what's a risk for me, and the spirit of adventure for me is kind of a nice reframe where I move into relating to it in a different way, very consciously, versus, okay, this whole getting over my fear, no fear. You see it on the back of, monster trucks, like you're not supposed to feel fear. Well, good luck with that. And fear has a valid place in life. We want to allow fear to, tell us that we ought to be careful, and then at the same time be able to move through fear in a constructive way.
Well, you're in luck.
Oh, good.
Because our guest today is one of the most fearless women I know.
Yay!
And what I appreciate most about Dr. Lise Janelle, who is with us today, is every time I see her, she has just been on the most amazing, up against her edge, physical challenge, and she amazes me. There's the mythological character Diana with the arrows.
Yes.
She's Diana.
Yay.
She just is out there with her arrows. Just to give you some background, Lise is a personal and business coach, and she focuses on heart center, spiritual individuals, artists, and entrepreneurs, and helping them achieve extraordinary success. And she can do that because she achieves personal extraordinary success. She's author of a fabulous book called Conversations with the Heart. I've seen her do a presentation on her book, and she, with such compassion and love, shows us how to get to our core authentic self that only can be heard through the heart. And trust me, she follows that heart. So, Lise, I'm so excited, and I know you just came off another adventure.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's nice welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. So, a few months ago, Lise climbed Mount Kilimanjaro just the way I go to a shopping mall.
Right.
And then just last week, she was in Switzerland hiking the Alps. And I know that you told me it was much more difficult than you anticipated. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, I guess I was a little naive because I did Kilimanjaro. I thought, oh, well, this Alps, that should be nothing.
Right.
Was I ever wrong when I realized that people, dream of doing this for a long time and train years before they go there? But I made it. I survived. It's beautiful. It was hard. It was passionate. It was challenging. But, I got to lose 6 pounds in 6 days. It was good.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness. My goodness. And when it's hard and it's challenging, Lise, what do you think, what do you call upon to get you through? How do you do it? Because you take risks way more than I would even ever, if there were 5-star hotels and somebody pushed me up the mountain and carried my bags, maybe. But, you put on those hiking boots and off you go. What do you think drives you to do these kinds of crazy, wonderful things?
One of my highest values is learning and growing,
Yeah.
and expanding my consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that I explore myself in challenging situations, not only physically. With my relationships, I'll do the same. I strive to live authentically. Physically, I do it. I like putting myself out of my comfort zone. You started, Freeman, with fear, and I totally agree with you. The only way we're not going to have fear is if we stay in our comfort zone all the time.
Right.
And as soon as you get out of your comfort zone, that's when you're learning, you're growing, you're out of your comfort zone, and the more you jump into something, the faster you learn about yourself and others. And I think also I was a competitive rower for 17 years. So,
wow.
when it comes to facing physical fear, I'm not physical pain. I'm not too scared of it. It's like if I could handle rowing, I can handle a lot of pain. So it's given me confidence of being able to handle tough physical situations.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because here's one of the pieces of my personal puzzle. First of all, learning orientation towards life, growth, willing to risk who I've been in service to who I might become, 100% my high value as well. But I was athletic as a young man, and there's a space that I can go into when things are challenging that no longer serves me. It's kind of a plow through it space. So, and I'd love for you to talk about this from your perspective, because as you talk about being a competitive rower, there's that extra gear, that extra push. But what motivated me as a young man, and the behaviors that came out of that competitive push, for me, don't serve me in my life. So my relationship with fear has had to change. I don't want to push through it anymore. I want to slow down. Personally, I'm not making this prescriptive that everyone ought to do this. I'm just relaying that for me, the gear of push through doesn't serve my growth anymore. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, and I got there one day when I was rowing. The last time I had a race, I sat there and I went, okay, I'm about to inflict myself an extreme amount of pain, and why am I going to do this? And I realized, I don't need to prove this to myself anymore. I've learned what I needed to learn, and that's when I decided to quit being a competitive rower. So I put myself in a situation where I push, where I know I'm getting something of value. I'm not doing it for ego, for punishing me, for anything. I'm doing it out of curiosity.
I love that.
To see what's going to show up.
I love that.
I remember one day also being at the climbing gym, and I was learning to do lead climbing, which is, you're the one at the front, and you're picking up the protection. And I got there, and that day I had been challenging myself at work, taking chances, and I went there and I went, this is too much. I'm not going to push through this. I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do this because I have enough in my life that I do not need to scare myself right now. So what you're saying is really wise. It's true. Sometimes we just push because we're used to pushing. And I now aware of that. I don't push just for the sake of pushing. If I'm going to push, it's because I know I'm going to get something of value. And if I don't feel like pushing, I'll also back off.
So Lise, how does that tie in for you to your personal conversation with your heart, based on what your book is about and connecting with the true wisdom within? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, that's a very wise question. The way I look at it is there are 2 phases to human development. the infantile, unconscious, asleep phase, and the mature, conscious, awakened phase. And in the infantile stage, we are reacting to our environment, running away from pain towards pleasure, using our ego to drive us. And those are necessary mechanisms while we are unconscious to drive us, because otherwise, if we were really connected within ourselves to our heart, we'd be like Buddha-like. Nothing is missing. I have no desire. We are totally at peace. So it's like we need to forget who we really are and be driven out of these emotions to give us interest, to give us talents, aptitude, personality traits. But that runs out of fuel at some point. And then if we are ready for this, we can wake up. And we often wake up through a huge challenge. Either we lose our job or our health gets challenged, we lose a relationship, we lose money. Something of a crisis usually happens to tell us, wow, the way I've been doing things is not working. Or we get inspired. Someone comes in our life and we're totally inspired by them. Then we start to wake up. And the way I like to describe it, the visual I give is the yin and the yang, the male and the female principle, the female which is listening and the male which is acting. And whether we're men or women, we have both the female and the male principle. And the listening is to listen to the heart. And I find that the ultimate success in life is that if we can listen to the heart and act on our heart's desire, we feel alive, fulfilled, passionate. We feel like, wow. And our heart wants us to know two things. The first thing, it wants us to know that we are worthy of love. And each one of us has accumulated stories that put veils between us and that knowing. So it's our job to let go of these beliefs and remember who we are. And the second thing our heart wants us to know is our dreams and aspirations. So when we pay attention and know that we're worthy of love and listen to our dreams and aspirations, right away we feel an uplift within ourselves. We start to feel alive. Things happen, they change, because otherwise it's like if while you're speaking to me, instead of looking at you, I look around and I'm not listening. If we were in the long-term relationship, you would end up feeling like I don't care about you, and then you might feel upset, hurt, depressed. Well, our heart is speaking to us all the time, but so often we're not listening, so we feel the same way. When people come to see me and they're depressed, I love it, because I know I have really good tools to help them turn that around, because it's all about listening. It's about listening to the heart. It's about acting on the heart, because as soon as we do that, it really turns things around. It's like, Sandy, you tell me, wow, I love eating at this Italian restaurant. And next time we get together, I make a reservation at that restaurant. You would go, oh, wow, she was paying attention to me. You would feel a little velour inside. You feel like I love you and I care about you. And the same thing happens to us. If we take the time to listen to our heart and act on our heart's desires, we start to feel better. Right away, things start to happen.
It's huge. The attunement to that is huge. One of the pieces, Sandy, that a language that I really like is the self-abandonment. When I'm in the self-identified with the attunement, right? That this is a kind of solitude, a way that we have a sense of ourself independent from consensus reality, that we can kind of separate from who we're told we ought to be or what we're told success should look like and so forth, to have enough of a sense of our individual wants and talents and what expressions, are in alignment with our heart's desire, as it were. And the piece that, Sandy, that I love that you talk about is when you know you're self-abandoning, when you recognize you are individually or even in relationship with others, which you call agency, which I think is brilliant as well. And there's a sense where it's a betrayal of this heart piece. I'd love for you to just weave that in if you could.
Yes. It's so interesting to me that, and you said it, Lise, when people come to you and they're depressed, I love that. I don't love that they're depressed, but what I appreciate
It's fertile soil.
is the depression comes when we self-abandon.
Yes.
It's not the circumstances that are happening out there. It's how we leave ourself. And as you talked about, that infantile asleep, we go back to that infantile asleep because then we didn't know how to be with ourselves. We weren't given attunement, so we didn't know how to attune. And the pain doesn't come from sitting with the fear, the way we talked about it at the beginning of the conversation, or the unknown. The pain comes when we leave and we can't be with it. As soon as we can be with it and embrace it and hear what our heart has to say, it transforms.
Totally. And I'm going to weave one more piece, and then at least we'll throw it back to you. The chronic depression is the chronic self-abandonment. And in the agency piece, we get into codependent self-abandonment with somebody else where we're requiring them to be something so that the small story that we have that binds us to, this very small possibility for our lives keeps going. And so the depression is a really great fertile soil to move into the awakening, which, Lise, you can talk about more.
Wow, I just love this. This is so exciting. I feel ideas percolating. I want to share one experience that was a big light bulb moment from that on abandonment.
Please.
I was totally infatuated with this man. And I go to France. I go teach a seminar over there. I'm all excited. I'm going to see him. I buy him presents at the airport. I can't wait to see him. I get home. The phone rings, and it's him, and I'm so happy. And he says, I'm calling to let you know that I no longer wish to continue this relationship with you.
Oh, my gosh.
Goodbye.
Oh, my gosh.
And he hung up.
Oh.
And I'm lying on my bed, writhing in pain, going, oh, my goodness, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. I want to die. And I went, die? You want to die? You want to die because some guy who obviously doesn't love you just hates you? And I was like, the big light bulb moment, exactly what you're talking about. It's not the circumstances that were bad. It was me abandoning myself. And at that moment, I decided that no matter what happens on the outside, I would not abandon myself.
Mm-hmm.
I would be there cheerleading myself, encouraging me, speaking to me as though I was speaking to a friend or a client or anyone I really care about. And I would speak to myself from that place. And so, that moment where you wake up, where you're not letting the little baby that you were, like you were saying, Sandy, that cannot soothe themselves, but becoming conscious and realizing it's my responsibility to care and nurture and want the best for me. It's nobody else's job but me first to do this.
And then we're not in a codependent, I need you to tell me I'm lovable in order for me to feel lovable. We have a sense of our lovability and our loving that we offer and share. So we move out of the sort of dependent to then independent to interdependent, where our offer and our share and our give can be really received versus that sort of enmeshment and that codependent dynamic, right?
Mm-hmm. And when we start to do this, it's by coincidence, quote, quote, we start attracting more loving people around.
Of course, more capable of staying in the loving, especially when things get a little wonky.
Yes.
I have a mantra that I use daily, and that mantra is, I won't abandon myself when I most need my own support. Now, when don't we need our own support? Always. In every moment, we need our own support. Yeah. And that just helps me always turn the light bulb back in and be there to take care of all the parts of myself that may not be able to handle the situation. But me as an adult, conscious, worthy of love human being, if I don't abandon myself and I stay with that, in this moment I'm okay, and in the next moment I'll be okay.
And what Lise said, I think, is really critical. Yes, absolutely. And then we're more likely to draw in loving people. Because look, unconsciously, when we're drawing in people who are critical, or we're drawing in people who don't really support us, sometimes we call them frenemies, right? Those friends who aren't really friends, but we somehow or other, they stick to us like, honey. Then that's not what we're attracting. We're far more likely to bring in people who are going to reflect
and mirror back
Bingo.
to us that we know we are.
And that's why you're here, Lise.
I love Lise and her arrows. She's so courageous.
How do you feel about the Diana analogy? I love that.
I can totally see myself.
Completely. You're on the back of that horse, naked with arrows.
What I love about that projection, look, we're always projecting all the time, is there is this way of projecting positive, right? That I attract people into my life who I can adore in a particular way. And I'm wise enough to know it's fantasy. Not entirely. Obviously, they're doing something that makes that projection a fit. Yeah. But I know I'm doing it. So I can even say to people, the role you play. I have this friend who plays the good mother. She's this sweet older woman. She's a former therapist. She's actually retired now. And we're friends. And her husband and I are friends. And every time I'm around her, I want to sit next to her. And I say, yeah, Joyce is her name. I always love to sit next to you because you're the good mother. And she plays that role. My own personal biological mom, though I love her, isn't the cuddly, warm. She's not a hugger. That's just not how she operates, which is fine. I mean, it's great. But then Joyce becomes my good mother. And that's my projection onto her. But it's very conscious. I know I'm doing that, right?
Yeah, and it's something that's really cool is that when we see the big picture, we'll see we are loved all the time, and that love and the things we need can come from one person, or they can come from 10 persons.
Yes.
You put them together, you realize I have everything.
Yeah.
And I'm generating it. So the projection is mine and I'm putting it out. And if it's a positive projection, then it accentuates the qualities, right? So when someone's positively projecting onto me, it feels good that I'm stepping into it. Now, my job when people are projecting onto me is to know it's projection too. So I'm taking it on in a very, in a particular capacity. But I don't want to become identified with that, right? It's just the role I'm playing and everyone agrees that's the role. And there's a consciousness about that dynamic versus playing the role in a way that's not sustainable because it doesn't have depth and dimension. It's like, we're in fantasy.
Well, and that what brings to mind when you say that is the importance of boundaries. So when you have your own boundary and someone is projecting that onto you, it goes out and it touches your boundary, but it doesn't have to land in your heart and mean anything about you. It comes into your sphere, and then you can manage how close you bring it in.
Absolutely.
And what it means to you. And it's very exciting.
Well, Sandy, you've heard me say this many times. When I was a young man, I would take on projection. I didn't know how to do exactly what you're talking about. And it usually wasn't a great projection, or it was, but it was a fantasy, right? So I attracted all these women. And the other thing when I was a young man is I'd also let women choose me. I didn't have a sense of what I wanted, right? So I'd be whatever the next woman needed until about 25. I had a moment at 25 where I'm like, okay, wait a minute. And I had enough of a sense of self to say, I'm choosing the women I want in my life. So I'm choosing more and more. But prior to that, heck, I'd be anything you wanted me to be.
Yeah.
And that didn't feel good.
Yeah.
That was a kind of profound self-abandonment.
Yes, it's huge self-abandonment. And it's something that I would imagine you learned very, very, very young.
Oh, of course.
Because as long as I take care of mom and give her the love she needs, then I'll be safe and okay. So anybody that comes your way, I'll just give you the love you need and then I'll be safe and okay.
I can even give you the direct background. The two sides of my family were dramatically different, and I had to play a different role for each side. When I was with my dad's side of the family, I was one thing. When I was with so I learned to be a chameleon and adapt to get my needs met early.
Chameleon.
Yeah.
And those are things that are great to be aware of and realize they were part of the perfection of our life because they gave us the ability. For example, Freeman, you're really good right now interviewing and interjecting and coming in and bringing the best out of this conversation. And that's probably part of your mission in life is to be able to spread, words of wisdom in the world. And this environment you were born into was the perfect environment to bring those qualities out of you. But now you don't need to be ruled by them. You can choose to use them because now they're good for you, out of inspiration as opposed to out of fear that you're not adequate or you're going to lose love.
Yeah, what's interesting about what you're saying, yes, thank you, first of all. I appreciate what you just said, and they're both, right? So what you're saying is sort of the reframe and often conscious because there's sort of two paths. Sometimes I'm in the adaptive pattern of people pleasing and being, this chameleon, and it's not helpful. And I need to consciously shift, because what's great about it, and this is going back to the heart, is I get a sort of instant hit, if you will, like someone like I can't stay there very long because it's inauthentic. I can't self-abandon for very long. I'm not comfortable at this point in my life doing that. So when I'm aware, no one is, but look, if you're asleep, you don't know the difference, right? And so you're doing your adaptive patterning, and it feels good because that's all you know.
Yeah, exactly.
At this point in my life, no go. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying, which is such a fantastic reframe, is to see where it is of benefit and totally required for me to do what I do in my life, and to also see where it comes up in the less than constructive way. Because it's both.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I had one of the deepest spiritual experiences of my life in 1989. And at that moment, and I'm using words, but it's hard, it was wordless, but at that moment I understood that everything that ever happened to us, everything that is happening, everything that will ever happen, is there to teach us how to love and how to gain wisdom. And when we look at it from our spiritual point of view, like our soul, which wants the best for us, put us in the perfect environment that would bring the support and the challenges we needed to help support our mission. Once we start linking that, we increase our confidence. We go, wow, I have been groomed to do this. And that instantaneously increases our self-worth, which makes it easier to connect with the heart, which makes it easier to not abandon ourselves, which makes us easier to make a difference. And that, I just love playing with that.
Yeah. And it also, when you say it, I realize, oh my God, it just calls on so much trust to live from that place, to drop that idea that it's up to us and we have to make something happen. And it's just a beautiful surrender.
Yes. It's an active surrender. It's not passive. It's very active. Because I feel like, especially with the rough edges, I'm surrendering all the time, because the previous part of me deemed them unacceptable.
Exactly.
So it's a constant, radical self-acceptance and radical acceptance of circumstances. Okay, here's the unfortunate part. We've come to the end of this segment. Lise, you're awesome, and we're so grateful you spent a little time with us this morning.
And if you come back to LA, maybe we can have you in the studio sometime. But just before you go, Lise, tell people where they can find your book.
You can go on my website, or you can go to conversationwiththeheart.com.
Conversation with the Heart.
And the website is?
drlisejanelle.com. Right. And there's a great meditation that helps people connect with their heart, and it's called heartfreedommeditation.com as well, and it's free. You can have it, and I think you would enjoy it.
That's beautiful. We'll put this up, of course, on the Cutting Edge Consciousness website. So if you get a little confused in this moment, you can always go to cuttingedgeconsciousness.com and look at the show blurb, and it will tell you this information. Lise, thanks so much for spending the time with us.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
Yes, I can't wait to see you, and I'm going to stretch my adventure and snowshoe with you in Canada in the winter this year.
Wonderful. I look forward to that with you.
Okay.
Awesome. And for those of you listening...
You're my Diana, too.
For those of you listening, we invite you to stay tuned, because Sandy and I will be back after the break to wrap things up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, sponsored by Hierophant Publishing, Hampton Roads Publishing, and Insight Events USA, producers of books, events, products for the mind, body, and spirit. Sandy, that was awesome. That was fun.
My heart is just tingling. I can feel energetically how that conversation dropped me from my head into my heart.
I love it.
When I'm there, there's aliveness, there's excitement. I feel so much more awake than when I started the conversation.
Well, this conversation enlivens me because, it's my conversation. I mean, that's what I talk about all day long. But
we attract.
And so, of course, we attract it, which is why we have a radio show. I mean, this is the whole thing. Yeah. And it's why the people tuning in are tuning in. Yeah, the whole thing fits. This piece about loving the rough edges and getting curious about them and moving into relationship with them, that's one of my favorite threads. The other favorite thread is, when am I going on an adventure in a way to try to prove or something that isn't really it, right? So I think the work never ends. I don't want to even make it work. It's a journey, you know,
And if you take what Lise said, that every single thing our soul is putting before us to learn, grow, and love.
I choose to look at the world that way.
It's our judgment that says good, bad, not so good. What if it's all the same? Some things feel better. Some things feel worse. You have to acknowledge them.
Yeah. But everything fits.
But everything fits. And in retrospect, when you look back, it's so clear.
I know.
You know, when she said, in this year this happened, and in this year that happened, and I learned this. And in the moment when the guy said, I don't want you anymore, that sucked. But looking back, she got a piece of her soul, which is much more valuable than the guy, I would say.
I call them top of the mountain moments, which is where we can see all the things like laid before us in our life and all the bends and turns and how perfect they were, even the ones that didn't feel so perfect.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, it's such good stuff.
I know. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Really
and look,
exciting.
The piece you've brought, which I'm so grateful for, is the language is this self-abandonment and agency, where the recognition that I'm abandoning myself. I just love the language. That's self-abandoning.
Yeah.
I'll tell you where it's been up for me. Something that Susan has modeled. So Susan's my training partner. We've been working a ton together. Susan doesn't let little things go. She says, that didn't feel good. And she addresses them.
In the moment.
Very soon after the moment, like as soon as possible. And I tend to let things go. I tend to let things mount until I kind of then have to deal with it. And I'm so grateful to have her in my life modeling this, because it's very gracious. She's not saying you did anything wrong. She's just saying that didn't feel good. She has this great line. I think I may have said it to you before. You deserve to feel good. I deserve to feel good. And that didn't feel good. I love the way she says that.
Yeah. And I think that there's a balance.
Yeah.
Barnett and I often would have arguments. Not that we argue often, but when we did have arguments or do have arguments, this theme would come up and I never got it. And all of a sudden I got it. And I would say to him things like, well, that didn't feel good. And, you know, it makes me feel. And he'd say to me, those are just your emotions. Deal with it. That's not mine to handle.
Yes.
So there's a fine line between being honest and authentic.
Yes.
And in the moment when something doesn't feel good,
handle it.
Not self-abandon.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Do what you need to do. And then be able to contain that discomfort.
Yeah.
And then in a moment when you're not triggered, evaluate, do I need to go back to this person and clean it up? Or did I just handle it for myself?
I totally agree with you. And for me...
And it sounds like it's serving you.
It's so serving me. Because what I do, look, I'm going to go straight after it. With Jasmine is I tend to let things go and it's not okay.
Yeah.
Because then I'm
you're
resentful.
Stuffing.
Yeah. And I'm doing it. Look, if we go all the way back to like zero, I don't want to lose mommy's love. You know, if I say to her anything that doesn't fit, you know, she's going to get mad at me and then withdraw the love, and then I'm feeling left. And what Lise brought to the conversation is, and I'm okay. So for me, it's kind of a big courage thing, you know, like, okay,
taking that chance.
I'm going to take and doing it in a way where I'm saying it right when it happens. Like, okay, that didn't feel good, you know, and not, because here's another thing I did. I used to also put on my mad persona when I was confronting Jasmine. And what if I don't have to be mad?
Exactly.
I just have to be clear.
Have your feelings.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Like I get all worked up.
That. Yeah.
And that's manipulation.
Well,
then I'm using
also,
my mad mood to get something, right?
And it's also
power play.
Giving yourself, that's how you gave yourself the right to have a feeling.
Yes.
If I'm not mad, then I don't deserve to have a feeling. But if I'm mad, now I can justify it. And that's just a coward's way to give yourself permission to be honest.
And it's a manipulation, because if I'm mad, then she won't
scare her or back down.
Anger topping.
Yeah.
Her and I used to do a little bit of that, where she actually used to do more than I did. I'd get angry, she'd get madder, which was then, okay, I don't want this to get that serious, you know?
But when you're an agent, that's what you do.
Yes,
because you don't think you have the right. And then 5 things happen, and it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. And all of a sudden, you're overreacting, and you feel like, well, I have the right to be mean to you. I almost said something not appropriate on radio. I have the right to be mad, to be this way for you, abusive or angry, because I'm mad.
Yeah.
And I once realized I'm connecting the dots. That's not a law in the universe that because I'm angry, I get to dump on you.
Yeah.
I'm connecting those dots and making that a law.
Yeah.
And when I broke that law, I just had to deal with my own anger, go back inside and say, what's this about?
Totally. Upset finds a place to land.
Yeah.
And so if we don't have the wherewithal, the relationship with ourselves to track, then we're going to make it about something.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just waiting for the thing to land it on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And no one wants to be in a relationship with someone who's looking to land their anger either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, deal with it, be responsible for it. So going back, because I do want to kind of complete this thought, is for me, when something doesn't feel good or whatever, my job is to say it in the moment. I don't have to be angry about it. I can just say, okay, because it helps create standards. It helps create, I don't want to systematize this and make it into a process or anything. I'm just loosely throwing out things. Obviously, in the work that I do, we talk about standards, we talk about conscious agreements and all these other things, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm just speaking openly about my experience without a system. I need to have agreements about how we will and won't talk to each other. I need to have agreements about whatever. And for me, saying when something is bugging me right away is so important. And it helps establish that we're respecting each other in a higher way, right? We're moving up the ladder in the respect category.
And if you can own it and say, that fragmented me.
Yeah.
In this moment, I'm fragmented. I need to take a moment, take care of that child inside who just got triggered, and then I'd like to come back and discuss it if need be.
So what you're talking about is slightly different than what I'm talking about, but I love it. If I really get thrown where I'm reacting, then I've been fragmented. What I'm talking about is a new standard I have for myself of how I want to be in relationship.
Honoring, self-honoring.
Self-honoring. And so when something didn't feel self-honoring, I want to say that doesn't feel self-honoring because I'm organizing around right now. This is what's happening today for Freeman Michaels. I'm moving into a sense of personal authority in the world.
Yes.
And some of my codependent dynamic with Jasmine where we mistreat each other, not because we're bad people, it's just what happens. It's the default setting. Neither of our parents do a great job of honoring each other. And so I'm up for honoring my wife and being honored by my wife, and I'm not okay with these little,
And that
dynamics.
is not abandoning yourself when you most need your own support.
And that is all the time we have today.
Well, this has been so great.
Awesome.
As always.
And for those of you listening, we, of course, invite you to keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Tune in again because this is what we do. Thanks for listening.